Welcome to another edition of Ask Andrew. Each week I answer a film-related question submitted by you, our BMFI patrons. If you have a film-related question you'd like to see me try to answer, please consider submitting it via the Ask Andrew form in the Film Studies Online section of brynmarfilm.org. Now, on to this week's question. Jerry asks, have the Oscars always had their current level of prestige? When did the Oscars become valued as the industry's most important awards? Do the Oscars have the same level of prestige outside the USA? Well, the Oscars have not always had their current level of prestige because the extent to which the larger movie-going public was aware of the goings-on in the industry, and particularly the goings-on of the Motion Picture Academy, has not always been the same. But certainly for decades, many decades, the Oscars have had the level of prestige they enjoy now. In fact, I think actually you could probably say the current level of prestige is down a bit from its height, probably sometime in the 1990s. The Oscars came about in the late 1920s after the creation of the Motion Picture Academy by the film industry as part of an effort to do, among other things, change the reputation the movie business had with the country at large because of some various scandals that had impacted the industry and prominent members of it. And the awards were thought to be one way to legitimize an industry that was not always viewed as legitimate by all sort of segments of society. I think the industry treated the Oscars with the sort of same level of respect basically since its inception, although there have been a number of changes to the awards over the years. But I think the second part of the question about when did they become valued as the industry's most important awards, they were the industry's only awards. For decades and decades, they were the industry's only awards. In fact, they were the only sort of entertainment-related awards for years as well. The Oscars were the first. Without the Oscars, there would be no Grammys, no Emmys, no Tonys. So the Oscars were always viewed as the industry's most important award. And I think that they are viewed with the highest level of prestige in the United States, but I don't think the level of prestige is significantly or markedly lower in other countries. Some other countries, many other countries, film industries have their own sort of comparable awards, and it's entirely possible that in Britain they view the BAFTAs with higher regard than they view the Oscars, but they don't exactly sneeze at the Oscars. So I think they're held in sufficiently high regard kind of around the world. But here at home, I think their prestige has diminished some since the 1990s. I think there are a couple of reasons for this. One is, I think that there's been a proliferation of other industry awards shows. Every guild seems to have them: the Screen Actors, the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, I think even the Producers Guild now. And there, of course, are the Golden Globes, which have been around for decades as well and are given far more importance than they deserve. But I think the proliferation of awards has in some ways, even though the Oscars goes last and these others are viewed at least significantly as sort of in terms of their value as predicting Oscars, I think that has taken a little bit of shine off the Oscars. I think another thing that has diminished the influence of the Oscars is the extent to which they are perceived, if not actually, they're at least perceived as valuing and awarding movies that are seen as art films or independent films, or basically movies that aren't seen by a ton of people. Part of the reason I think the Oscars' popularity and prestige peaked in the late 1990s is that's when Titanic won a number of Oscars. And that was a film that the industry said was a well-made film, a significant film, a film worth honoring. And the American public said that was a movie worth seeing in droves. Since then, there's sort of been a split between what the public tends to see and what the industry tends to award. And I think that has, to the general population, diminished the prestige of the awards. I think to the extent that politics enters into things and Hollywood is seen as having politics that are out of step with some segments or some portion of the American populace, I think that might diminish the Oscars in some regards to some folks. And even more so, I think the issues the Academy has had with diversity and inclusion, certainly that's been a big issue this year, but going back a number of years, the Academy has for decades skewed older and skewed male and skewed white. And the Academy in the last several years has taken great steps to expand their membership, to increase its diversity, both in terms of race and gender and other things and citizenship and all those sorts of things. But I think for a significant portion of the movie-going audience, the fact that it's been limited in those regards and the awareness that it's been limited in those regards, as that consideration sort of increases in prominence in the public, I think that has diminished the influence of the awards to an extent as well. But frankly, I think the biggest thing that is, if you're talking about the film's influence with the general population, the general public, at least those who go see movies, I think the biggest source of the decreased prestige has been the fact that they don't seem to be interested in recognizing movies that the audience seems interested in going to. There are exceptions, of course, there are still exceptions, but it doesn't sort of line up with the frequency that it used to. And that's probably the biggest reason the general public cares less about the Oscars to the extent that they do. And they still care, and people are still interested, and the show still gets good viewership by the standards of today's television audiences, but it's not what it was, and I think that's probably the biggest reason why. If you have a film-related question you'd like to see me try to answer, please consider submitting it via the Ask Andrew form in the Film Studies Online section of brynmarfilm.org. Who knows, next time I could be answering your question.